Well, welcome to our Connect Group series based on the book Another Gospel by Christian apologist Alisa Childers. This is session 4, and session 1 was an overview looking at what is progressive Christianity and how does it differ from historic Christianity. Session 2, we looked at the question, what do we believe about God? Session 3, we looked at the question, what do we believe about sin? And today, during session 4, we want to tackle that question, what do we believe about Jesus? And really, there's a lot of different thought in our world today about Jesus. And I want to go back to a classic quote. It's a little bit long, but it's from the late, great C.S. Lewis in his book, Mere Christianity, What Do We Do About Jesus? Here's what he has to say about this. I'm trying to prevent anyone from saying the really foolish thing that people often say about Jesus. That I'm ready to accept him as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. That is the one thing we must not say. A man who was merely a man and said the sort of things that Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic on the level of the man who says he is a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman, or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool, you can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God, but let us not come up with any patronizing nonsense about his being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to. And I think that is a great quote that really contrasts what I see happening in the world of progressive Christianity and this idea that Jesus was just simply a good moral teacher. And this distinction that some are drawing within progressive Christianity, the difference between the historical man Jesus and this concept of Christ. I really appreciate that quote from C.S. Lewis. So what do we believe? What would I say is a core non-negotiable of the faith? Well, here it is. We believe that Jesus was both fully God and fully man. Where do we get this? Well, we have to go all the way back to the Old Testament, to the Messiah prophecies, the Messianic prophecies. And in Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14, we learn this word of prophecy from the prophet Isaiah, where he writes, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will be with child, will give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel." And that's the concept, this idea of Emmanuel. Well, what does that mean? Well, we need to fast forward to one of the 4 Gospels, the Gospel of Matthew, and you're going to think it's Christmas right now as I share from Matthew chapter 1. Here's what the angel says to Joseph about this child that is about to be born. He says, "Do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She'll give birth to a son. You are to give him the name Jesus because he will save his people from their sins." And then Matthew explains why this is so crucial. In the next verse, verse 24, he says that all of this took place to affirm what the Lord said through the prophet, that the virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. God with us, the gift of the incarnation, the gift of Emmanuel. So what's that look like? Well, Jesus was fully God. Paul, in writing to the Christians in Colossae, chapter 2, verse 9, says about Jesus being fully God, "In him all the fullness of deity dwells in bodily form." And for some in our world today, they cannot accept that Jesus was fully God. Well, what about this idea that Jesus was fully man? I think sometimes in my world, it's more difficult for me to wrap that around my brain than the idea that Jesus was fully God. Well, here's what Paul teaches in Philippians chapter 2. And many of you will recognize this teaching from verses 6 through 8. Paul says, "Jesus, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but he made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant and being made in human likeness, and being found in human appearance as a man, he humbled himself, and he became obedient to death, even death on a cross. Jesus Christ, fully God, fully man. Now, I could end the session right now, and if you're having brownies for dessert or whatever you're having, you could get right to that. But I want to go a little bit further. I want to share with you some of the things that Jesus taught about himself that I believe are crucial for us to grab a hold of. I want to take you first to Mark chapter 10, and here's the context. Two of Jesus' best friends and disciples, James and John, have really created quite a stir. Because one of them wants to sit at Jesus' right hand, the other wants to sit at Jesus' left hand. The other disciples are indignant, and they're really kind of going after it. And Jesus uses this. He seizes this moment to teach about himself. And here's what he says about himself. The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus says, I am here to be a servant. So should you. I've come to give my life as a ransom for many. Well, if you go to the next gospel, to the Gospel of Luke chapter 19, we see that account with Zacchaeus, the chief tax collector, the wee little man. And here is how that narrative is summarized by Jesus in verse 10 of Luke 19. He says, the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost. That does not sound like merely a moral teacher. That does not sound like merely a human teacher. Jesus came saying, I came to seek and save the lost. Jesus also teaches us about salvation and how we can gain salvation. And in John 14:6, here's what Jesus said about himself. I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. The Apostle Peter in Acts chapter 4, this is after the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, but not very long after. He finds himself standing before the religious leaders of the day, the most important religious leaders in the first century world. And they're getting ready to tell Peter and John, you can't talk about Jesus anymore. You can't talk about the resurrection anymore. But here's what Peter boldly proclaims in Acts 4:12. He says, salvation is found in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given to men by which we must be saved. We believe that Jesus is the way, that Jesus is the truth, that Jesus is the life, and that salvation is found in no one else. And so to summarize today, what do we believe about Jesus? We believe he's the Son of God. We believe he was fully God and fully man, and he came to serve, he came to seek and save the lost, and salvation is found in him. I want to share one more recommendation with you, a great book. I know that many studies and connect groups have been blessed by this book, The Case for Faith by Lee Strobel. Lee Strobel was an atheist journalist that set out to disprove Christianity, and he became a preacher and an apologist, and it is an excellent read. Well, thanks so much for joining us for session 4 of our Connect Group material on another gospel. Join us next time as we look at the questions, why must I believe, and why must I believe that we're saved only by the grace of God?